Digital archive sequence initiated.
Hi, I'm Scott Kelby, editor of Photoshop User Magazine, and welcome to the ImageReady Web Workshop. Back in Photoshop 5.5, Adobe started including ImageReady with Adobe Photoshop to give you added web muscle. In this video, we're going to show you how to take advantage of Adobe ImageReady's power to transform your static web pages into interactive web pages. Plus, we'll show you how to slice and optimize your images for fast-loading, great-looking web pages. This is an amazing program, and we've got a lot to cover, so let's get right to it. The first thing we're going to look at is the interface and working environment of ImageReady. When you first look at it, it looks like Photoshop 6. You'd swear you're in Photoshop. It looks so much like Photoshop, and of course that's the idea. Adobe wanted to make these seamless so you could go back and forth between them. Now we're using the Macintosh version on this video. It's exactly identical to the Windows version. The only difference is the Macintosh keyboard is slightly different than the keyboard on a PC. So I'll have to give you both the Macintosh and the Windows keyboard shortcuts as we go in this tape. But other than that, everything's the same. So you're going to be fine regardless of which platform you're on. Let's take a look at ImageReady's. Well, let's start with the toolbox. As you can see, these are the same tools that you're used to seeing in Photoshop all the time. And as you click on a tool, of course, just like in Photoshop 6, the option bar shows you what your options are. So the floating palettes that used to be back in Photoshop 5 and 5.5 and things like that, the floating options palettes have been replaced by this palette up here. And you can see it's got the brushes palette just like it does in Photoshop 6 and things like that. So as we go through here, it's the same tools you're familiar with. There are a couple of brand new tools that you will be using in ImageReady. One of them is the Image Map tool. We have a whole section on image maps, so we won't go into that right now. But there are actually 4 different image map tools that we're going to be looking at. There's also a new tool under the rectangular marquee tool. There's actually a rounded rectangular marquee tool that draws rounded selections for making pill shapes and things like that. And of course you can control that again from up here in the options palette. So that's brand new. Let me deselect that. That's a new tool. Those are primarily the new tools. Now there is of course the knife tool, and it's for slicing images. You can call it the slice tool, I guess. The thing about it is that's in Photoshop too. In fact, there's a lot of things there's so many things in Photoshop that we wind up doing like most of our creative work in Photoshop, and then we zoom over to ImageReady to do the web stuff. But they've integrated so much that the knife tool, for example, which used to be just in ImageReady in previous versions, is now in Photoshop. We're going to talk about the knife tool and slicing and things coming up in the next segment. But primarily, your new tools are here and here. The rounded rectangle, they're pretty much the same from there out. Also, I think if you go up to the menus, you'll see that the menus are very much the same. There's the image menu, the layer menu. This menu is new. It's not in Photoshop 6, the slices menu. But the select menu, filter menu, and a lot of the filters, not all of the filters, but a lot of the filters from Photoshop are in here. Most of the important ones are in here as well. And it looks pretty much the same and acts pretty much the same as Photoshop. So we're not going to have a lot of trouble acclimating yourself to this to this particular program or part of Photoshop. Also, the keyboard shortcuts are the same. Like to jump from tool to tool, you would press L for the lasso tool, W for the magic wand, V for the move tool. So you're using a lot of the same keyboard shortcuts, not just for that, but for like zooming in and out of your image. Command minus to zoom out, or Command plus to zoom in. And on PC, of course, that would be Control minus to zoom out and Control plus to move in. So it's the same keyboard shortcuts. Look over the Layers palette. It looks almost exactly the same. The History palette, the Actions palette, there's all the stuff you're familiar with. So the interface is very, very much the same. A couple little things that are different that I want to show you. One is, for example, let's go ahead and look at the vector tools that were introduced in Photoshop 6. You've got the rounded rectangle. You've got kind of this, pretty much the same tools. But see a little arrow at the bottom? If you click on that arrow, it actually tears away the palette as a totally separate palette. Now you're probably asking yourself, why doesn't Photoshop do that? I have no idea. I wish it did. There's actually quite a lot of little things that are in ImageReady that would be great to have in Photoshop, and that's one of them, being able to tear away a little palette. So anytime you see that at the bottom of a set of tools, you see the little arrow, you just click that and it becomes its own separate floating palette. Another thing that's kind of different, I'm going to pull this up so you can see a little better, is at the very bottom, now you can see I have Photoshop open back behind it, so don't let that throw you, where ImageReady is up here. The bottom of the palette, there's an info bar. Now you've got an info bar in Photoshop, but it's much more robust in ImageReady. If you click and hold, you have a number of things you can choose from. It can show your original file size and your optimized for the web file size, or optimized information image. There's just a ton of things, the dimensions of the image, download size at certain speeds, and you can customize this. I'll show you how I do it. What I like to do is I like to show the first one to show my original and optimized size. Now it does not show your optimized size at first. You actually have to click on the optimized tab up here, which this shows your original version, and this is what it would look like when you click, okay, if you put it on the web right now. So let's go back to the original, and once you do that, now it shows you both. Now it shows you it was a 527K file to begin with. It's a 99.96K GIF, so it's a little bit too big to be a GIF. Now, you also have another info area right next door. So what I like to do with this one is, rather than having the same info twice, which it does by default, I switch this one to the download time on the 56K modem. So it tells me basically, here's the before, here's the after, and then that's going to take 19 seconds to download on a 56.6K modem. So it gives you a little extra information there that you normally wouldn't get. Those are the main things I think you need to know about the interface and environment. And there are three reasons why that you would want to go to ImageReady. The reasons are you want to optimize your images, you want to do animations, you want to do slicing, advanced slicing, or you want to do rollovers. Those are the four main reasons. Almost everything else you can do in Photoshop, but those are the four reasons you'd come over here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do optimizing at the end, because optimizing is not fun. It's not horrible, but it's not the fun part of this. I want to get to the fun stuff first. So we're going to start off with slicing. We'll do that first. We'll do some rollovers, some animations, and then finally we'll get to optimizing at the end. That way we've learned to use the whole program, and we're going to use optimizing when it's time to save the file. So let's start off in the next segment with slicing images. Now we're going to look at slicing. This is the fictitious website that I built for our project today. It's not a real company, I just made this up. And we're going to take this into Photoshop and slice it up. Now, I'm actually in Photoshop right now. If I press the F key on my keyboard and tab, it brings me back to Photoshop. What I had done basically there was I clicked this third icon to hide all the menus. Then I pressed the tab key, just so it looks a little better. Now to get back out of that, I have to hit F again, F as in Frank, and then the tab key to bring it back. So here we're back at our inside Photoshop. Before we actually go into this, I'm actually in Photoshop. I like to do most of my design work in Photoshop, and most of the people that I've talked to that are using Photoshop and ImageReady together do the heavy design work in Photoshop because you have more power, more filters, and the creative tools are really here. Although many of them are in ImageReady, they're all in Photoshop, so you don't want to be limited. I'll show you how real quickly. I'm not going to design this entire site for you, but I'll give you just a quick overview of how this site was created in Photoshop, and then we'll jump over to ImageReady real quick. Oops, I don't need to do that. I've got the file right here. I recently used, here we go. We're going to open up the front view of a 747, and I'll drag this over here. And then I opened up this shot right here, the side view of a 747. And I dragged it in. It was kind of large, so I'm going to shrink it down. It's quite huge. There we go, because I wanted to have some space up top. I need a little more. There we go, something along these lines. Now, this is a pretty nasty looking collage at this point, so what I did was I'm going to bring up the layers palette, And what I want to do is I want to create a layer mask here. I want to blend these two images together. And to do that, you use this little icon right here, the layer mask icon. You click right here. That's step one. Step two is you go and grab the gradient tool. And then step three is you just drag the gradient. Of course, I dragged it the wrong way. Let's try dragging it this way. There we go, to blend those two images together. So that's basically how I created the collage for the bottom of the page. Then up top here, we added well, the name of the fictitious company, which was Air. Whoops, it was a lowercase a, Air London. And let me kind of move that over so we can see it. I'll choose a different typeface. This isn't, I don't think, the exact typeface I used, but it'll get us in the ballpark. I bring up the character palette so I can tighten up the spacing between the letters a bit. There we go. We'll increase the size to like maybe 30 point. So that was the Air London, and then I made this gray rather than, here's the, you can change the type color right here. Made that gray rather than back Air London, and then we came up with the little slogan beneath it. And the slogan was, what was it? The fastest way to the UK. Now, what's happening is, this is right justified. I'm going to click it so it's left justified. There we go. And I think I made the type size pretty small. I think I made it like maybe 10 point and made it red. There we go. And I need to increase the spacing between letters. Something along those lines. It's not exactly what I did, but that's pretty much like it. To create the web buttons, I created a new layer, and then I just drew a little square button where I wanted my first button to be. I chose a darker blue color, something maybe dark here like this, and filled that with blue and deselected. So that was my first button. I remember I had a row of buttons over here. Then what I just did is I kept making copies of this layer. The shortcut to make copies of your current layer is Command J, as in Juliet. Or on PC it would be Control J. You just press that keyboard shortcut. It makes a copy, and then you can drag it over. If you hold the Shift key, it'll drag it over straight. So I just drag it right to the edge, hit Command J again, made another copy, Command J again, made another copy. I think you can see where this is going. And as each one of these is, you can see, is their own separate button. So that's basically how I created the buttons. And I put some text in here, and I put 3 little circles up here. I just literally drew a circle. I grabbed the elliptical marquee tool and drew a little circle. I changed my foreground color to white, and I just added a stroke. Just like a 1-pixel stroke around the little circle. And I used the pencil tool to draw hands of a clock. And I mean, it's really a very simple design, but I think it's going to help us get through this project. But I wanted to give you just a little background on how I did that. Oh, and I also took the word Air London, I moved it down here, and I used free transform to just kind of skew it a little bit and rotate it so it looked like it was on the plane. And then I simply, once it was there, I just lowered the opacity to like 30%, so it looked a little bit more like it was on the plane. I don't want to go too much into how this is all designed, but I wanted to give you a little bit, just a little bit of background on how we created the site. Okay, so here we go. You can see the name is kind of on there. It's just that name taken. I had to make the word Air red because you could barely see it. So I just kind of, it's very subtle. Okay, back to our project. So here we go. Why would I want to slice this image? I've designed it in Photoshop. Now I've decided I want to slice it. Now I could slice it here in Photoshop. There is a slicing tool right there. But really, for advanced slicing and for power, the ImageReady actually does excel when you want to do some serious slicing. So we're going to actually jump directly from Photoshop right into ImageReady. We do that by either clicking the little icon at the bottom. You see it shows a Photoshop icon and then ImageReady, or you can press the keyboard shortcut Shift Command M as in Mary, or on PC it would be Shift Control M to jump back and forth. Okay, we'll just click the icon, and when you do that, it basically does a background save and opens your new image in ImageReady. Okay, if ImageReady is not launched, it will automatically launch ImageReady for you. So here's our image. We're now in ImageReady. Now, it always comes in kind of small like this. You can see that they've actually darkened your other image back in Photoshop. And that's so you don't confuse the two. You don't accidentally click back and forth. You can see the dark image is what was in Photoshop. It did a background save and moved it over to ImageReady. So let's let's just kind of bump it up a little bit. I'm going to hide the layers palette. Let's bump it up a little bit so we can see the whole image. So now we're in ImageReady. Two ways to know that you're in ImageReady, because it can be a little confusing jumping back and forth. Number one is you'll see these tabs in ImageReady. That's how I always realize what program I'm in. It's got these little optimization tabs up top. Also, you can look at the icon that appears right up here. It's a little different than the Photoshop icon. So you know you're in ImageReady. Also, whatever your preview browser, you'll see as on this video, as we create a graphic, we'll jump over to whatever our chosen browser is and preview our image. So you'll also see that in there, and that'll help. So there's a couple of visual indicators of where you are. Now, I've decided to slice. Why do I want to slice? There's three reasons why slicing is important. The first one is loading. A sliced image actually loads faster if you have a bunch of little images rather than one big image like this. So a sliced image will load faster than one very, very large image. Number two is you want to be able to do rollovers and animation. You want to be able to add interactivity to your site to where when people move their cursor over a button, it changes colors or highlights or glows or bevels or embosses or does something. You want to add some interactivity to your site. You can't do that without slicing. So that's a critical thing. Number three is the third reason you want to come to ImageReady and slice is for optimizing. Because take a look at this image, okay? This image has got a very detailed photograph down here, okay? Now, we're going to talk about optimizing in detail later in the video. But I can tell you right now, when you have a big photographic image, you're going to want to use a JPEG. A JPEG will maintain the photographic quality the best and give you the smallest file size, okay? So this would be a JPEG. But does this need to be a JPEG? Actually, JPEG doesn't work that great on text. Does this need to be a JPEG? Does all this little stuff need to be a JPEG? Actually, I could make it smaller if I could make it a GIF. Well, how can I make one big image, this part be JPEG, this part be GIF, you know, GIF, GIF, GIF. Maybe I want the flag to be JPEG. How do I determine that? Slicing. Slicing lets you go in here and say, make this JPEG. You can go in slice by slice and say, make this one or make this another. You can optimize a big image slice by slice, deciding what's the best, what's going to make the file size the smallest. So it's pretty amazing that you can do that. That's another benefit of slicing. Now, how do you use the slice? First, to jump to the slice tool, you just simply press the letter K. You can think of K as the knife tool. Okay, so you press the letter K, and it jumps over there. So you can kind of think of that as the knife tool. This is how we slice. Now, this tool works very much like the selection tool in that you draw a square, and that is going to be a slice. Okay? So you can see it kind of pulls out just like the selection tool. Now, when I release this, the second you release it, what ImageReady is going to do is it's going to build all the necessary HTML tables for you. Because how are you going to get this image all sliced up to appear as one big image on a website? Well, you have to have perfectly tight-fitting tables. ImageReady does that for you. And the second I let go of the mouse, you're going to see the tables it builds. Watch. Bang. There it is. Okay? It automatically built tables for you. It automatically numbers them. You can see there's number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. It's automatically building the tables for you. Let me just slide up a little so you can see there's number 1 is this big table. So it actually, you're not just optimizing graphics here. It's actually going to create an HTML document for you automatically. Okay, so when you make that slice, there it is. Now, once you've kind of put that into place, you can draw more slices. You can just draw yourself another slice, and watch how it automatically updates. Bang, more slices. Okay, it just immediately creates new slices for you as you go. If you decide to, I want to slice this into one, and this into one, and this into one. And you notice how these keep renumbering, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I draw a square here, that becomes 10, that becomes 11, because it's drawing all the slices for you. Now, you can adjust slices by switching tools. There is a slice select tool. You can toggle back and forth between the slice tool, which is for actually creating slices, and the slice select tool, which is for selecting or editing or adjusting slices. So you're only going to use this tool to slice, then you're going to want to switch to the slice select tool. You can toggle back and forth by pressing Shift K. Shift K will toggle you back and forth. If you watch there in the tool palette, Shift K toggles back and forth between the tools. Okay? Shift and Shift K. So we are on the Slice Select tool. You can select different slices, and if you decide you want to delete a slice, just select it and press the delete key or the backspace key, and it will go away. So you're selecting with this tool, and you can also toggle back and forth. If you've got the slice tool, you've made a slice, and suddenly you want to switch, if you hold the command key, or on PC the control key, it will toggle you back and forth, so you don't really have to, if it's just a temporary thing where you drew a slice and you go, oh, I just want to move that over a little bit, you can just click and pick up the slice, move it. So you can toggle back and forth again, command key on Macintosh, or the PC, it would be the control key to toggle you back and forth. Now, once you've created a slice, you can edit it. However, there are other ways to create slices besides drawing them yourself. Okay? The first thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just delete all these slices. We can delete all the slices just by choosing delete all from the slice menu. Now, there's another way to create. Rather than just drawing it yourself like you would with a, just a regular selection tool. Let's delete that. I just hit the backspace or delete key. You can also go up to this options palette for the slice tool, and you can either choose a fixed size, where you can say, okay, I need one to be, exactly an inch, 72 by 72. Now, once you've done that, you've told Photoshop, I want all my slices to be a 1-inch square, because 72 by 72 pixels does equal 1 inch. And when you click, boom, it draws a perfect 1-inch square wherever you click. Okay? And that can be very handy. And I do use fixed size from time to time. Now, the other one, let me delete all the slices again. The other option here, your other style, is constrained aspect ratio. By default, it gives you a 1:1. If you decide that you wanted to do a 1:2, then you're going to get a completely different ratio. It's going to draw, rectangles rather than squares. Okay, it's going to give you an aspect ratio, a constrained aspect ratio based on this. I've never found a reason to use this. You might run across this. I just want to let you know it's there. I always leave mine set to 1:1, so I have a little bit more control. So you do have 3 different ways there that you can do that. Let me go ahead and get rid of this slice and get back to our main project. Also, when the slices are in place, let's say we've made some slices. Let's say I put a slice here and a slice here. We're working. It can kind of get crazy when you get all these slices on your screen. You got bars going everywhere and different things, and it can just kind of get messy like this. Well, there's a couple of things you can do. First thing is, anytime you want to, you can just hide all the slices by pressing the letter Q. Now, in Photoshop, that takes you into quick mask mode, but in ImageReady, it just simply hides the slices. They're still there. You didn't delete them. You can always bring them back by pressing Q again. We just hid them from view. Now, the other thing that we're going to look at is, you see all these numbers. It shows you, the number of the slice, and it shows you all these boundaries and things. You also have control over them. Under the Edit menu, under Preferences, go to Slices. And the Slices Preferences dialog box will show up. The thing I want to really bring your attention to is right here, Numbers and Symbols. I'm going to slide this out of the way for a second. What that's referring to are these little blue boxes. Now, you can ask for huge blue boxes. Let's just show you that. So then you get the really, if you are concerned about the numbers. Now, ImageReady is going to number these automatically for you. Okay, it's automatically going to do these numbers. So it's doing it as just kind of record keeping. I don't really get involved a lot in changing these numbers. In fact, I can't think of a situation where I've gone in and changed these numbers. So it's for your purposes or not. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Let's go back to the slices preference. You can turn them completely off if you like, and then it's much, much cleaner. If you don't need to see the numbers, and I don't think in most cases you will, you can turn it off and work like that. Now, I'm going to leave them on only because that's the default setting, and most people never ever go and change the defaults, so you're most likely going to see it looking like this. There's also an opacity setting for these numbers and symbols. The opacity setting is just when you do see the numbers. Right now they're at 100% opacity, they're solid, but if you wanted to, you could lower that amount. You could go into the slices menu and say, I want to see them, but I don't want to see them quite that strong. I want to see what's behind them, and you can see it dimmed them and made them transparent. That to me is almost just as bad. I really prefer to work with them off altogether, but again, in this situation, I'm going to leave them set at what the default would be. You can also decide if you want to just show the lines only. You can choose a bunch of different colors built in for the for the line color and things like that. So it's totally up to you. But set this up however you like to do it. There is no right or wrong way. Set it up to whichever way you're most comfortable with. Also, when we're using the select slice tool, you notice how it dims everything out? That's just to help you be able to see what you're working on a little bit better. So you see it not with the ghosted back version, but the full resolution version. That's just there to help you. Couple of other things. There's also, I mentioned that you could press the letter Q to hide the slices. There's also an icon that does that. It's this little icon right here in the tool palette. If you don't want to press the letter Q, you can use this icon for turning off or hiding. Another thing that you might run into from time to time is, let's say we're working on this slice here, is under the slices menu, you can actually choose to divide a slice. If the slice, if you made it twice as big as you wanted it to, I wish I could split that in half. You don't have to delete it and try it again. You can choose divide slice. It brings up a dialog box, which is very nice because it actually has a preview. So if you say, okay, I want to divide this horizontally into 2 slices down, it actually will show you where the slice is going to wind up being. Same thing down here. If you decide you're going to divide it into 2 vertically rather than horizontally, it'll show you what you're doing. So that's kind of nice. So that's divide slice, and there may be situations where you want to use that as well. I just want to, these are the kind of things that some of these things don't appear in Photoshop. So these are the reasons why you might want to do this in ImageReady rather than doing it in Photoshop, because as far as advanced slicing goes, this is the place to do it. Now, I'm going to give you a shortcut. This next thing I'm going to show you is going to save you a lot of time. When you're working on a slice and you want to make these decisions of going up and choosing all these different things, rather than keep going up and up to the menu, on Macintosh, Control-click, and it brings up a pop-up menu. You can change the preview of what the screen looks like. We'll talk about that a little later. You can preview it in another browser. You can delete slices, divide slices, duplicate slices, hide all the slices, select all the slices. So it's just a time saver. Control-click on a Mac. On a PC, you would use the right-click button. Right-click to have this pop-up menu come up. Now that I've shown you all of that, we're going to move on to another part of slicing that is going to make all the things that I just showed you look real complicated in comparison, because it makes things so easy and so much fun that it just makes slicing a breeze. But these are the slicing essentials you need, but now we're going to look at slicing even a better way. First, let's get rid of all these slices. Let's select all the slices, and then we're just going to hit delete. So all the slices go away. Now, let's bring up the Layers palette. Same keyboard shortcut in ImageReady as it is in Photoshop. You would press the F7 key on your keyboard, brings up Layers. Now I've got all these things in Layers, okay? All these different buttons and things are in Layers. So what we're going to do is, we'll start with I'll start with the Specials button. The Specials button right here, okay? I'm going to toggle it, just turn the visibility on and off so you can see which button we're working on. That button right there. Now, to really make a perfect slice of that button, I could turn off the other buttons around it to kind of see where it's at. But actually, there's a much better way to do your slicing, in my opinion, than to have to draw all these little slices. If you've got your image on layers, in other words, this is it looks flattened, but of course this has got a bunch of different layers. If you're on layers, you can use a great technique. Go under the layer menu and choose New Layer-Based Slice. What this does is it will take your exact data from your layer and make a perfect slice. Now, it does it for you. That's nice, but that's not the great part. Let's go ahead and choose New Layer-Based Slice, and bang, look at that. It does all the work for you. You don't have to worry about being right on the money or perfect slicing or any of that kind of stuff. Okay, we'll do a few more. Okay, we'll go to the Upgrade button. Layer-Based Slice. It doesn't get any easier than this. Layer-Based Slice. In fact, you could probably create an action. Well, you certainly could create an action that would just assign this to an F key. You just choose Layer-Based Slice, Layer-Based Slice. Okay, that's the deal. So that's one good part. But here's the thing. If you draw a regular slice, okay? You draw a regular slice. Let's say I went and actually drew a slice around the word Specials. Then I go grab the Specials layer and move it. Well, the layer moves, but the slice stays right where it is. The slice is stuck there. And if I go and move the slice, it'll move, but the button doesn't come with it. They're completely separate. It's just like you're putting an overlay over Photoshop. However, when you use the technique that I just showed you, if you use that New Layer-Based Slice technique, then let's go back to the Special button. Then, if you happen to grab that layer and move it, it automatically builds new tables for you. That's amazing. If you've ever done slicing before, that's a pretty radical concept, that you can pick up a layer, move it, and as you move it, Photoshop rebuilds all brand new tables for you as you move. You cannot do that with any of the slicing I've shown you so far on this tape, with the exception of what I just showed you. So if you draw it manually, any way that you draw it manually, the technique that I showed you will not work. This only works, this ability to pick up your layer and move it and it's going to draw new tables, only works if your images are on layers and you go up and choose layer and choose new layer based slice. Now it's grayed out right now because I just created one, but right there. So that's a pretty amazing thing. Layer based slicing is wonderful. Here's something even I think is even cooler. If you decide to make a change, look at your table. Let's say that I decide to add a layers effect, like a drop shadow or a glow or something. I'm going to add a glow. Now, when I choose outer glow, you're going to see a slightly different, well, not slightly different, you see a dramatically different box for layers effects or layer styles. It does the same thing as it does in Photoshop, but it's a nice tiny little box. Look at that. Remember in Photoshop it like takes up your whole screen, but in ImageReady it's the same stuff, just a nice tiny little box. And you can show more options and you'll see all the different stuff that you would normally see. So it's really just very compact. It takes up, you know, an eighth of the space of the one in Photoshop. And I know what you're asking yourself. Why doesn't the one in Photoshop look like this? I have no idea. Okay, now, you're going to see something else you're going to wish was in Photoshop too. When I change the color, little pop-up menu shows up. Pretty sweet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little glow behind this. I'm going to change my mode to normal. I'll put a little glow. I'll increase the amount of glow so you can see. Right? But watch the table. Take a look over here. As I increase the glow, okay, the table grows to accommodate it. Let me just choose something. Look at that. That's pretty slick. So this is another reason why you want to use this layer-based slicing. It won't work any other way. If you use the layer-based slicing, the tables will grow, they'll expand and things to do it all automatically, where you'd have to do this by yourself the other way. You'd actually have to go in and manually adjust this. Let me throw away that glow. All right, let me get rid of, I'm going to go ahead and select all my slices. Let's just delete them all. There we go. And let's move this back to where it was. Back into space there. If I had done a manual slice, of course I can't even do what I just, all that stuff I just showed you, just that dog don't hunt. So let's just kind of, let's say that I made this slice. You can't adjust this slicing area. If you switch over to the select tool, you can actually just grab these corners and, I mean, you can drag them and move them as you like. There you go. Get the right cursor to show up. You can drag them and move them as you like. So you can adjust it that way. But why go through that mess when you can use the layer-based slicing? I think it's just, that's so amazing. Now, if you do choose a layer-based slice, let me show you this. Let's go ahead and delete this. If you do use a layer-based slice, here's our button. Let's choose layer-based slice. And you change your mind. You say, you know, I do really want to adjust it manually. You can always do that. You can always go into the slices menu and choose promote to user slice, which basically it's no longer a layer-based slice. Now it pretends that you built it yourself. And you notice how the little yellow adjustment things came up. Now you can adjust it yourself. So if you ever decide, it's not a one-way trip. If you ever decide you want to change your mind, you can. So that's great. Now, all right, so let's say that I've made a layer-based slice here, and I made another slice. I'm going to choose another slice over here. Let's say I've made a couple of slices, either layer-based or any otherwise, okay? And I want to start working on these. Now, ideally, someone's going to come by my site and they're going to click on, there we go, they're going to click on these different slices, okay? When they click on the upgrade slice, what happens? How do I determine exactly what happens to somebody that comes by my site? Well, you can click on this little button up here called Slice Palette, or you can choose it from the window menu, Show Slice. But I'm just going to click this button, and up comes the Slices palette. Now, what do you do in the Slices palette? Well, this is where you decide what's going to happen when somebody clicks on that. Well, first is, okay, the type of this is it is an image. Okay, the name by default is Air London Site _03. That's the naming that ImageReady does. I don't mess with that naming. Then it asks me, okay, what's going to happen when you click? Well, I want people to go to http://www.airlondon.com/upgrades.html. That's where I want them to go. Now, I'm going to hit the Tab key. What happens? Where does that show up? If we leave this blank, when you click, it's just going to show up in the same browser window. But you could ask for it to show up, actually. If you wanted it to show up in a different frame, you could do that. You could say, okay, I want this to show up in a new blank browser. You could type it in there. Now, there's more options for this slice. You can say show options, and you've even got more options you can choose from. Okay, how about this? It'll actually write a JavaScript message for you. So when someone puts their cursor over this button, in the bottom left-hand corner of their browser, you can have a little description of what that button is. You could say, you know, join our upgrades frequent flyer program. So when they move their cursor over that graphic, this message, this little JavaScript message, will appear not on their screen, but in the info bar of their browser. Okay? And then for an alt, you can add an alt tag. What an alt tag is while that is loading, sometimes people would like to click and go learn about upgrades before that button actually loads. And if you've got a big, graphic like this, it might be 10, 15 seconds before that graphic loads. So in here you can write upgrades. So before that graphic actually shows up on screen, someone could see that that button, that broken graphic that doesn't show up yet, is the upgrades button. They could click it and move on. The dimensions dialog over here basically is just for changing the dimensions of that. I really don't do it that way. I really haven't found a real reason to go in there and adjust my slice, because I'm not in this little slice dialog until I've made my sizing and all. So I'm opening this slice last. So that's really important. You're going to be going into the slice area for a lot of different reasons. You're going to have to, every time you make a button, every time you want somebody to click, this is where you're going to go. You can also double click on the little slice tab to fold this up, expand it once, or expand it all the way. You don't have to go and choose this little hide options or show options thing. You can do it just by double clicking right there. Now, let's take a look at our image. Let's go back here. I'm going to close the slice palette. And okay, well, I could make a slice of, let me go to my slice tool. I can make a slice of Air London, okay? But I'm going to make my background color white. Do I really need to load a big piece of white here and a big piece of white here, a big piece of white here, do I really need to do that? Well, actually, no. I would just assume that it loaded nothing here. Rather than, even if it's a 1K graphic, I'd rather that nothing loaded here, just use the background color. Another great thing you can do with slicing. Say, okay, I want this piece right here to not have a white piece of image. I want nothing there. That particular area, I don't want anything there. So I'm going to go to the slice palette, and instead of having an image there, okay, that's table 1, it's going to load a piece of white. Instead of that, I want no image whatsoever. I want nothing to show up there. But I can choose the background color that goes behind it. Okay, I want white. So now, it's not even going to load a graphic. It's going to load nothing. It's going to load a blank table, and it's going to put a white background in it. So now, how long does that take to load now? Nothing. It doesn't load. It's just a white background showing through. So now you're really starting to make some decisions about, wow, I just saved some space. I just made this graphic load faster because I'm not going to put any image there. Now here comes the wild thing. You can actually type inside that box. So if you wanted to add a little HTML and say, copyright, 2001 London Air. Now I got to tell you, I wouldn't put that at the top of my page. I got to tell you that right now. I mean, you might put it at the very bottom of your page or something like that, but that text will appear in that spot. Okay? Now, once you've got some slices together, if you want to preview this, you can preview this in your browser. All you have to do is click on this icon right here. It's going to launch your browser if it's not already open and preview the site. Now take a look before we do this. Slice, slice, slice. There's some tables over here. Slice, slice, and that's nothing. Now because I put text in there, you're going to see some text appear there over a white background, not over a white Photoshop image. So I'm going to click this. We're going to go ahead and launch our browser, our default browser. And there's our image. And you can see right here, there's the copyright 2000 London Air thing happening right there. Okay? I made some pretty nasty slices here. I was just doing it, you're going to do a better job when you do it yourself. Here's the code that ImageReady wrote to create this. This is actually a web page created by ImageReady, and there's what the final piece is going to look like. okay? And there are different slices here. These are different. Notice how? Watch down here in the corner. I put my cursor over, and there it says, join our upgrades frequent flyer program. That's a little JavaScript you wrote. If you were to click on this, it would take you to that website. Of course, we're not online right now, so it's not going to take you anywhere. But I just wanted to show you that you can preview anytime you want going into that little spot right there. There's a couple other ways to create slices. I don't want to slice you to death here, so let's delete all these slices. Just a couple more ways. If you don't want to use any of the methods I've shown you, there's yet other ways. One is you can make your rulers visible by pressing Command R, or on PC Control R, and then drag out some guides. So you could drag out a guide there, maybe a guide there. We'll drag out a guide here and say, okay, I want to slice right along that little square. Then you go into the slice menu and say create slices from guides, and it will immediately it'll use all the guides that you put together to create slice tables for you, okay? So that's one way to do it. Let's select all slices and delete or backspace. Now let me remove these guides. Let me switch to the move tool and remove them. So that's another way if you decide that you don't want to do it. There we go, guys. Thank you. And just get them out of the way. So that's one way to do it. I'm dragging these guides back up to the rulers, and then I don't need the rulers anymore, so I'm going to hide the rulers again by pressing Command R, or in PC Control R. There's yet another way, and this is one way that you really might like to do it. If you're a little queasy about using the slicing tool, you can just draw a selection. Just get a regular selection tool, draw your selection, go into the Slices palette and say create a slice from that selection, and bang, it just instantly creates it for you. You can deselect, and you've got your slices. So there's a lot of ways you can do the slicing. It's not limited. It's really wide open, and that's one of the reasons why you'd want to come to ImageReady, because there's just a tremendous amount of slicing power. So now that we've learned to slice, let's look at creating image maps. It helps to learn image maps after you've learned slicing. So in this next segment, we're going to look at taking a static image and sending people to different locations by creating an image map. Here's the project we're going to use for creating image maps. It's a flattened image, and let's hit F tab to get back to ImageReady. Here we go. And what we're going to do is, this is a flattened image, and I basically want people to come by this upgrades page. And once they get to the upgrades page, I want them to be able to go to the frequent flyer program page, the redeeming points page, the earning upgrades page. These are all topic headers. So I'm using the same top, but this area down here is bottom, and I want to be able for them to click on this page. It's just one big, giant graphic. Now, I could do all the slicing, all that kind of stuff. If you don't want to do all the slicing, if you want to put this up as one big page, how would you get people to go to different places? If you don't want to slice, or it's a small graphic, you don't really need to slice, how do you get them to go to different places? Using the image map tools. Those are these tools right here in the dialog box. The shortcut to get to the image map tools is to press the letter P, okay? And of course Shift P will toggle you through the different tools if you take a look right there. The easiest one is just the rectangular selection. You just draw out a selection, and that's going to be an image map. So if somebody clicks there, they're going to go to a website. Okay, well, which website? Well, there's a tool down here at the bottom called the Image Map Select tool. Once you click that tool, notice this little button popped up here? That's the image map palette. Okay, now across the top here in the options, there's a bunch of options not available to us right now, but these are alignment options to center, horizontally align, distribute, things like that. So these are just alignment. These are stacking order. If you wind up running one on top of another, you can change the stacking order, like send to front, send to back, of different little slices of your image. It's not a slice, I don't want to use that word, little image map areas. Okay, so once we've defined one, you just click the image map palette, it comes popping up, and this looks pretty familiar. It looks like the slice one. What you're going to do is determine what happens when they click on this graphic. Well, they're going to go to let's see, airlondon.com/flyer.html. Okay, so they're going to be able to go to another URL. Again, what's the difference between this and a slice? Well, I'm not slicing the image. This is one big image. I just want when somebody goes right over that cursor to be able to go to this site. So it's one big image. It's not sliced into pieces. We're just determining where in this one big image that's going to load. We'd have to say this whole thing is a JPEG. Where are they going to go? To that address. Again, you can choose your target window, your alt tag, while it's loading. Well, actually, it's not going to be a slice, so you don't really need an alt tag. The alt tag is going to be for the whole image. So you would say, upgrades page or something while it's loading. upgrades page. So that's basically what you're doing here. Now, there's other tools. Let's go ahead and close this. You can hit delete to remove that. That is the rectangular tool, okay, the rectangular tool. There's also a circular image map. What if you just wanted them to click that little circle button? You can just draw a circle. You can adjust it with the corners. Get your image map select tool, and you can adjust the corners so it's a perfect fit. And we'll just adjust it back in. So now, if they will not go anywhere if they click that, they have to click the circle. And you can do both if you wanted to. You can have them say, okay, if they click the circle, or if they click the word frequent flyer, I want them to be able to go to another website. Now you notice when I created this one, the other one just kind of dimmed with a bright blue so you can see where it was. There's yet another tool for creating image maps, the polygon image map tool. Let's say that you wanted to have an image map around this tail, and that if somebody clicked on this area, you can see I'm just clicking and dragging. It's kind of like a connect the dots type of thing. It's like the polygonal lasso tool in Photoshop 6. When you get back to where you started, a little circle appears there to say you've come full circle. Now, if anybody clicks in there, you might want to take them to a page that talks about the engine on that particular plane. So you could add another image map. If they happen to click anywhere inside there, their cursor would change to the little pointy finger. They would know, oh, there's something to click there. They click it, and only if they click on that engine, it goes to a description of maybe the Rolls-Royce engine that is powering that particular plane or something like that. So that's the basic image map stuff. There's not that much to it. Once you've learned how to do slicing, that's really, really pretty simple. Once you've got the slices in place, you can hide these image map areas. I said slices, I meant image map areas. You can hide these image map areas by pressing the letter S. Okay, maybe not. It's the letter A. My bad, the letter A. You know, a lot of people would stop and fix it on a video, but I say no. Let's press on. The letter A hides your slices for you. Also, there is one other thing you can do. Now, I have a flattened image here. Let's bring up the layers palette. Mine is a flattened image. I don't have any layers. If you did this in layers, if each one of these was on a layer, well, remember how we did layer-based slices? If these were on layers, you'd be able to go into the layer palette and actually choose new layer-based image map area. It would do it for you. So again, you can have Photoshop do all the work. You can do it manually, or you can have Photoshop do all the work if you saved your layers. So that's just there's not that much really to know about the image maps. You're only going to use it in a certain situation. And I think you can see, once you've learned slices, it's easy to learn image maps. Now we're going to get to some really fun stuff. In the next segment, we're going to look at creating rollovers and adding some real interactivity to your website. Okay, we're going to use the original Air London homepage to create our rollovers. And by rollovers, I mean I want to add some interactivity to the site. So when someone's viewing this site on a web page and they move their cursor over like a button, maybe it glows or embosses or blinks or something to let them know that that's a live button. So it's really giving them some instant feedback, some interactivity. And that's done using rollovers. Before you can do a rollover, you have to do slicing. You have to slice up the image to be able to do a rollover for a particular button. So let's start off by going to the Layers palette, and we're going to slice we'll do the Itineraries button. We'll slice it, and of course I want Photoshop to do all the work for me, so I'll just choose New Layer-Based Slice, and boom, there it is. There's our slice. Now, I'm going to hide those slices from view. They're still going to be there, but I'm going to hide them using that keyboard shortcut I showed you earlier, the letter Q. Okay, so it's still there. Now what we're going to do is to create a rollovers, we need to bring up the rollover palette. It's found under the window menu, Show Rollover. And it brings up this little palette. Now, the first thing I want you to do in this palette, before you do anything, is let's change the size of your preview. Here's your preview. It's kind of small. You can actually ask for a bigger one by choosing Palette Options. Just choose a big old one. And click OK, and it gives you a much better preview. And rather than seeing that tiny little thumbnail, I'd rather see this big giant one. Okay, so these in rollovers they're called states. The normal state of this button looks like that. Somebody comes to your website, it's just a blue button. Now, I want to create a new state, a state when their mouse moves over that button. It's called the over state. To do that, you just click this little icon down here. It looks just like the new layer icon. You click it once, and it brings up an over state. Now, you'll notice that your normal state and your over state look exactly the same. The reason is what it's based on is what's happening in the Layers palette. Well, the Layers palette looks exactly the same here as it did here. So they look the same. You have to go in here and do something, make some kind of change to this Itineraries button to become the rollover. Here's the kind of funky thing. You're limited to what you can do. Okay, there are some limits on what you can do. There's actually quite a few limits. The best thing to probably to do, the easiest thing to do, that works all the time, is to add or take away or adjust a layers effect. Okay, a layers effect. So click on the overstate. So you're working here. You can see the little highlight working here. And let's add a layers effect. Let's add perhaps bevel and emboss. Okay, so that when someone rolls over your image, it'll kind of pop up and emboss. See like that? See what's popped up? All right, we're going to add a bevel and emboss layers effect. Again, it works the same way as it does in Photoshop. It's just a different looking, more convenient, more better. More better is not really, you know what I'm saying. Okay, so now it's going to pop up like that. Let's test it. Let's see if it works. Go back to your normal state, and you're going to click this little icon right here. It's the one next to your little preview button. It is your preview and browser button. This is your preview rollover tool, I guess. You click it, and then we're going to be able to test. As we move our cursor over, bang, it pops up. Gives us the overstate. See? Bang. There it is. So when someone goes over your site, that's what's going to happen. Kind of a nice little thing. It just a little pops up. Now, so they go to your site, normal looks like this, put their mouse over, it looks like that. What if they click? You can add interactivity for that. Okay, so the normal state is this. The move their mouse over is this. Then there must be a click state, like when they click. Or when they click the button down. It's called a down state. To add a down state, just add another, let's stop this previewing there. Add another state. Now we want to choose what it's going to look like when it's down. Well, remember I told you the easiest thing you can do, it doesn't mess everything up, is to add a layers effect. Well, let's add a color overlay, which allows us to pour a color over that. And you notice it didn't affect the over or the normal. It's just affecting the down. So we're going to change them. You can change the opacity. So you could lower this to 50. That's perfectly acceptable. You can change the mode. Let's change the mode to hue. So it kind of just changes. Now, let's close that and let's go back and preview. So normal state looks regular. Overstate pops up. The down state actually gives you a different color change. Let's preview it. Here we go. Here's the preview tool. Move up here. That's what it looks like when you move over it, and then click. And when you click, you can see it goes to the down state. And you can watch over here in the layers palette. Watch the layers palette moving as I do this. Okay? See how it changed to add the color overlay when I clicked? Normal, over, click. So that's basically how you do it. Now, the things you can do are you can add different gradients, different things over it using all these layer effects. That's my recommended way to do it. Because you really just can't go and change the button itself. You can't go in there and start using curves and using well, there's no curves in ImageReady, but using levels and doing all these things, because if you make a change here, like if you invert the button, it's very popular to do an invert, to actually kind of do an X-ray, change the color of the button. Well, if you try to do that, unfortunately, it's going to kind of mess things up. Let me get rid of color overlay, and let's instead try an invert. An invert would be Command-I, or on PC, Control-I. Well, when you do that, unfortunately, notice how it changed them all. Okay? Here's the trick around that. The trick around that is this. One of the things you can control is turning layers on and off. That can be a down state. Notice when I turn this layer off, it didn't affect the other two. So let's do this. We're going to make a copy of this layer. We're going to drag this new layer below our existing layer. Okay? So, original layer, new layer, it's a copy. I'm going to hide the original, then we can go change this copy. Now I can invert, and it only affects the down state. Okay? Let's preview that. Grab our preview button here. Normal. Let's make sure I got the right one. There we go. Normal. Over, and click. That actually let us mess with the graphic. Okay, we made a copy, and the important thing was we dragged it under. Now, that's like your standard old, rollover. Let's take it a step further. What I'd really like to happen, okay, is when I go to the down state, let me just kind of move some of this stuff out of the way so we can see. When I go to the down state with the itineraries, I don't want them to have to go to another page. I would love, when they click right here, for a table to pop up right here. A whole table to pop up with the itinerary right on this page. I don't even have to leave this page. It pops up there. Well, how do I click here and make something pop up somewhere else? Go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Remember when I told you that the rollovers palette does whatever it sees in the layers palette? Well, up at the top of my layers palette, I've got 4 hidden layers. You know what those 4 layers are? It's an itinerary. Okay? If I make them visible while I'm in the down state, so I got to hide these now. Okay, I got to hide them now. Go to the down state and then make them visible. When I click down, it's going to appear. Watch. I'm going to move all this stuff out of the way. Now I go over the button, it pops up. But if I click, watch. Bang. There comes that extra artwork. How did it appear again? Because I made it visible in the down state. There it is. Okay, I just put that little whole thing there so it appears. So that's really critical. You can make things, I call them dual flips, but I mean basically it's just another rollover. You're rolling over here, and then something else appears someplace else. So you can move things on a layer. You can hide things and make them appear. So that's just kind of an amazing way. I've got another little layer trick that we're going to show you in the next segment, in the animation segment. We're going to come back and do a rollover that runs an animation when you click it. So that's pretty freaky. But anyway, that's basically what you need to know about creating rollovers, about the different states, and again, about clicking and creating what we call a dual flip, or always known by some people as a dual flip, that actually shows something moving on your screen. Now let's look at creating animations. Again, we're going to come back and do an animated rollover in this segment that's really going to blow your mind. Now we're going to create animations. And ImageReady does a pretty decent job of creating animations. We're going to start by, we're using the same project where this time the client, the fictitious client, Air London, has come to us and said, we want you to create advertising banners that we, Air London, can place on other websites to promote our airline. So we're going to create a banner. We're going to use standard banner advertising size, or 468 by 60. I'm going to just create a new blank document. Here it is. And this is the animation that we're going to build. I want to start by colorizing the background. I'm going to actually go back and open up our Air London site, because I'm going to steal some colors out of there for our banner. Kind of continuing with the theme there for when people click on the banner, when they come to the site, they'll see a similar color scheme. I'm going to steal this blue, the dark blue, and I'll use that as our background. I'm going to fill this with my foreground color by pressing Option Delete, or on PC that would be Alt Backspace. Then I'm going to select maybe half of the screen here, half of my animation, something like that. And I'll make it this powder blue back here. Let's grab the eyedropper tool, steal that powder blue color by clicking, and then I can fill this with Option Delete, or on PC Alt Backspace. Okay, and now I've stolen the colors I needed. I can close this other site. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create some type that I want to be animated. So I'm going to I'll go ahead and type the first word I want to appear animated. We'll say this one's low fares. Okay, there we go, low fares. There's a little line there just to show you where the baseline is, where to grab it. Okay, there's low fares. I think I'll make the word fares white. Okay, there we go, so low fares. That's our first word. Now look in the layers palette. Why are you looking in the layers palette? Because this works just like the rollovers. Once you've learned rollovers, animations are a breeze, because it works very, very much the same. Okay, it works very, very much the same. It uses a similar palette under the window menu, show animation, similar palette. Okay, what's the first thing you do in this palette? Go to the palette options and choose the big icon. There we go, so you can really see what's going on. Okay, you can't really see what's going on, but it's better than it was before. Okay, so here's our first animation state. When someone looks at this animation, what you're going to see is the word low fares on that background. Okay, what I want to do is create another frame. So down here, just like we did new rollover before, now it's new animation frame, and I'm going to create a new frame again based on what's in the layers palette. It's all based on what it sees in the layers palette. So for the second frame, I'm going to make a copy of this layer. I'm going to drag it straight over, okay, over here. Now I want to hide the original low fares, okay? So we have two separate frames. This one's not going to say low fares. This one's going to say, well, this will be London, L-O-N-D-O-N. And the first word will be air, and we'll change its color. We'll use that dark blue. There we go, and this will be air. Let me switch to the type tool and type in the word air. Let's try to do a better job of this than I'm actually doing. There we go, air, and we'll try to use that dark blue color for that type. There, that took a lot of work, didn't it? Okay, so now let's go back and look in our animation palette. Here's the first frame. Now the first frame, look, it's showing the extra type I just created, so I have to hide that. Okay, because I added that new type and it was still showing it in the first frame, so I just hide it. Now that's the first frame. That's the second frame. That's our, look, we've created our first animation. Now let's preview it. To preview it, that's the bottom of the palette. The first thing you see, the first little pop-up menu, is looping. How long do you want it to loop? Do you want this animation to play just one time and stop? Do you want it to just loop over and over forever, endlessly till the end of time? Or if you choose other, you can decide how many times you want it to loop. You can say, I want it to play 3 times and then stop. Okay, you can choose that here. In this case, I'm going to have it loop forever. These are the controls similar to what you'd have on a tape player. Rewind the very first frame, rewind by 1 frame. There's the stop or play button, then fast forward 1 frame or fast forward all the way to the end. So it's very much your pretty same stuff that you've seen over and over again. Now, let's go ahead and hit the play button, and let's watch our animation. As I said, that was stop, this is play. This is play. Let's go and click the play button and see how our animation looks. Watch up here, you'll see a preview. Man, that is a boring animation. Okay, besides being incredibly annoying, well, actually, I think we can just leave it at that. It's incredibly annoying. What we want to do here, you don't obviously want it to go bang, 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 back and forth. You know, people are going to leave that website so fast. You'd probably prefer a smooth transition between this and that. Well, ImageReady will do it for you. Instead of you having to go create a little layer that moves, you know, and changes and transitions all the way down to this end, it will actually build all those frames for you. The process of going from this frame and building the intermediate frames to get you to here smoothly is called tweening. T-W-E-E-N-I-N-G. To tween, you just click on the second frame and choose, well, tween. And up pops the tween dialog box. And you can ask it to use all layers or only a selected layer. And the parameters it will affect is it will tween based on the position. If the position is changed, it'll do it. If the opacity is changed, it'll do it. Or if you've added effect, it will tween from one effect to another. So let's click OK, and look at down here. It's going to add 5 frames between the frame that I'm on and the previous frame. When I click OK, watch, we have 2. Watch what happens when I click OK. Bang. It builds all these frames. Okay? Let me hide that layers palette while we're working on this. So it builds all these frames. Now let's watch our animation. We'll start at the beginning. I'm going to press play and watch our animation after tweening. It just moves right over there. Okay, much better. Now, it's still kind of annoying because you kind of have to, what's it say? That's because you need to put a pause in here. It needs to pause at low fares, then move over and pause at Air London. Well, that's what these little pop-up menus are below each frame. You can click and hold, and it asks you, right, by default they're set to no delay. There is no delay, it just repeats over and over again. You can ask for a 1/10 of a second delay, 2/10, 5. We're going to ask for a 1 second delay when it starts. Then I'm going to scroll to the end of my palette and ask for a 1 second delay when it ends. Just use it right here. And you can use the presets 1, 2, 5, 10, or you can add another amount of seconds. If you want a really long delay or precise delay, you can just add it there. We're going to choose one of the built-in defaults. Now let's try our animation. Let's click OK. Start at the beginning. A 1 second delay, moves across, and has another second delay. Watch. There you go. Low fares, Air London. Okay, now we can add more to this if we want. Okay, let's go to the very end and add another animation. Let's add another frame. You click the new frame icon just like you would a new layer icon or new rollover icon. We add a new frame. Let's bring up a layers palette. What I want to do here is I'm going to add some more copy. Okay, I'm going to switch my foreground color back to white. I'm going to add some copy. And it's going to appear, of course, on a new layer. We're going to say daily non-stops to Gatwick. Now, you don't see that type because it's blue type on a blue background, so we're going to choose white type. And it's kind of large. Let's make it like 12 point. Daily non-stops to Gatwick. And I'm going to show the character palette, and I'm going to release a little of the spacing between the letters. It's kind of tight there, and I'm just loosening it up a little bit. There we go. So what I want to happen is when it gets down to the Air London end, and it pauses for a second, what I want to happen is I want this to start way up here Okay? So it starts up there. I'm going to add another frame, and then I want to move it to there. So it kind of lines up with Air London. There we go. So what's going to happen is it's going to go from this frame to this frame. Of course, right now it would be very harsh, just bang, bang. But if I ask to tween it, then it will tween it in between. Get it? In between? Okay. We'll hit tween. 5 frames seems like a lot. I'll just go 3 frames for this one. And click OK. And it adds those frames. Now, sometimes this causes a little bit of trauma to your image. The reason why is you've added a new layer. And when you go back to your very first frame, it still sees that new layer you added. So you kind of have to go and turn it off for the frames where you don't want it to appear. Okay? Frame 3, I don't want it. Frame 4, I don't want it. Frame 5, I don't want it. Frame 6, I don't want it. I don't want it until the word Air London appears. Okay? And then I only want it, there it is, right up there. Okay? And then it can appear there. It can appear there. You can see it moving down. Appear there. And there's the last frame. Now let's run our animation. Okay? Let's go back to the very beginning. This takes you all the way back to the beginning. Now let's press play and watch our animation. Let me close this. Watch our animation up here. That's pretty lame. The first part's okay. Second part's a little slow. Okay, now, this brings up an interesting point. Now, it looks a little sluggish here. What's it going to do in your browser? I'm going to tell you right now. When you preview this in a browser, it's going to go a lot faster and a lot smoother. Why is it running so slow in ImageReady? Because ImageReady isn't playing a pre-compressed GIF, and incidentally, your animation is going to have to be a GIF. They don't make animated JPEGs yet, so it's going to have to be a GIF. But it's already compressed. It's a done movie. This is building it on the fly as it goes. So it takes a little time. Let's stop this, and let's go ask for a preview in your browser. And I'm going to give you a warning now. When you see this in the browser, it's going to be going a lot faster. Let's click this button, launch the browser. Need to get a newer browser. Here it goes. Watch. Ooh, the Gatwick thing's still crawling. Watch the first one. Bang. First one goes really fast. Actually goes too fast. Hey, I know what the problem is. Let's switch back. Let me close out of this. I know what the problem is. What it is I've got 1 second delays on all these. Okay? Now, here's what we can do. We can say, select all frames. Okay, select all frames, and then if you choose any one and say no delay, now they all have no delay. So let's look. I wanted a 1 second delay at the very beginning. Okay, then I wanted a 1 second delay when it just said the word Air London right there. Okay, but I didn't want any delay on any of these. Till the very end, we'll add another 1 second delay. Now let's run our animation here in ImageReady. See what it looks like all the way back to the beginning. Hit play. Much better. I probably should have done 5 steps. It would have been a little smoother. But I can't go by what it does in ImageReady. I got to look at it in my browser. Let's click the preview and go check it out in the browser. Much better. Now, I'm pretty happy with the non-stops to Gatwick, but the Air London is definitely moving too fast. So that's a case where I would go and start slowing down some of the frames to keep that from happening. Okay, it's definitely causing a problem. Okay, so we would go back. I'm not going to make you sit through that, but I will go back and let's do this. Let's stop our animation. Okay, it's already stopped. What we want to do is I'm going to start a brand new animation. Let's bring back my layers palette, and let's choose, actually you can choose from the animations palette, delete animation, and it'll just delete all the frames. Okay, so we're back where we started with our little layers palette and a couple extra layers. I'm going to use just the word Air London. I'll show you another thing that you can do, because there's certain things that you can do. You can do movement, you can add effects and things like that. I'm going to change this from low fares to Air London. Be nice if I did it in their logo type. In their fictitious logo type. Okay. All right, so here's Air London, and what I want it to do is I like it to fade in. I like it to kind of just, you know, appear from nowhere and just fade in. All right, so step one is a background with no type. Step two is a background with the type. Let's just make the type bigger, a little bit larger, so we can make it 36 points. Okay, so here's our Air London. We want it to just kind of appear, just kind of fade in. All right, from going to nothing and then fading in. Let's just check our layers palette, see what's happening. Layers palette shows the first one. It's killing me here. Let me just slide it up here so we can see it. Layers palette shows just a background and then this. Now we can ask to tween. Let's tween. This time it's going to be based on the opacity. Okay, and we'll add 5 frames. So you'll see it just appear. Okay, here we go. Start from the beginning, click OK. And their layers, it slowly fades in. Why? Because I have all of these set to 1 second. So let's say select all frames. Let's change the thing to no delay. Fade in. So there it is. It's fading into the image. Okay. Now, here's another thing you can do. Let's shift select. You have to do this using shift select. Shift select all the frames. Okay. Shift select them. Then add a new frame. Do you see what it did? You can say reverse frames now, and then it'll fade in and fade out. Let's try that. Play, fades in, and fades out. Fades in, and fades out. So I can think you can see where you can go with this kind of stuff. All right, now that you kind of know how to do an animation, it's pretty simple, I think you can see. And if you have a frame that you want to delete, you just grab it and drag it in the trash can if you decide that's not what you want to do. So it's, I think it's pretty easy once you see it visually done. Okay, just drag any frames you want in the trash, or you can choose from the pop-up menu, you know, select all frames, delete frames, and things like that. Okay, so that's pretty easy. But now let's really have some fun. I'm going to go back and open up. Let's close our banner. Let's go back and open up our Air London site. And I'm going to create a rollover that is an animation. And this is where it gets fun. Not that it already wasn't fun, but it's going to become more fun. What I want to do is, and I don't know if you'd really want to do this on the site, but when people roll over the itineraries, instead of it just blinking and changing color, I want it to, like, shoot down and fade off. Just, pew, shoot down. Just for a cool effect. Okay, so of course, first step, you know, you got to slice. If we're doing a rollover, you got to slice. So we'll create a layer-based slice. Whoops, let me undo that. I want to the itineraries. Itineraries button. Let's do a layer-based slice. Okay, hide it by pressing the letter Q. Now we're going to go to the rollovers. Okay, so regular state is that. Our down state, our overstate. When you move the mouse over it. Once you choose over, then go to animation. Now we're going to build an animation based on that overstate. Okay? So let's go and bring the layers palette up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to move this button. Okay? Let me just move this down a little bit. I'm going to move the itineraries button, click on it, and literally move it straight down to here. But when it gets to there, I want the opacity to be 0. Okay? So let's, before I do that, before I move it, let's put it back up here. Let's create a new animation state. And that animation state will be this button moved down here, set to 0. So it fades away. And then, how do I get from there to there without just going bang? Well, of course, tween. We'll tween 5 frames. Okay? And at the very end, we're going to need to, well, we'll try it first. We'll kind of do it together. Here we go. So opacity is actually, well, I left it at 1. That's okay. Let's try our rollover. So our regular state shows that. Our overstate, it's going to fade away. Let's try it and see if I did it right. See how it fades out? So now when you roll over it, it's going to fade out. Now it runs a little slow here. Runs a little slow here in your palette, but it's going to go quicker. Now, go back to our animation. oops, we need to go to our second rollover state to see your animation. There it is. It's got no delay. Let's watch it. Let's preview it in the browser. Let's let the browser load up. Let's preview it in the browser. Bang, bang, bang. Okay, this is a situation where you may not want it to loop forever because that is incredibly annoying. So let's go back to our image, go to our second rollover state, okay, and change our animation from forever to once. Now let's preview that in the browser. Okay, bang, just goes away. Pretty cool. So you're actually doing an animation as a rollover. Pretty neat stuff. So there's another way to add a whole different amount of interactivity by just changing the opacity, changing the position of something, and incorporating an animation into a rollover. Okay, we've reached that point of the tape. We've been avoiding the whole tape. Optimizing. It's because it's not the fun stuff, it's not the exciting stuff, it's not the interactivity. It's we've done our slices, we've done our rollovers, we've done all this stuff. Now it's time to take it to the web. Now it's time to optimize our images and actually put them up on the web. So that's where we are. To do that, we open the Optimize palette. It's found under the window menu, Show Optimize. Now, if you're used to Photoshop 5.5 or Photoshop 6, this whole section is going to be very easy for you because this is set up, although it looks a little different, it's almost identical to Photoshop's Save for Web dialog. In Photoshop's Save for Web dialog, you can view your original image, what it would look like optimized. Whew, that's a really bad optimization. We can do better than that. Yeah, let's see if we can do a little better now. There we go. There's our original, our optimized, 2-up, which shows you your original and your optimized for the web, and then a 4-up that shows you your original and 3 different variations so you can make your choice of which looks best. This looks horrendous, this looks pretty bad, that looks better. So this is just like what's in Photoshop Save for Web, so you're working in a familiar environment. It's just don't let it throw you that this is its own freestanding window and this is its own floating palette, which I personally like better than Save for Web because you can adjust the size of this very easily, which the Save for Web dialog box doesn't want you to do much adjusting in Photoshop, and you got a floating palette rather than it being all attached in one big dialog. But it does essentially the exact same things. So first off is there are 2 types of web graphics that you're going to build for the web. They are GIF or JPEG, primarily GIF or JPEG. Those are the 2 that are widely supported by all the browsers right now. And basically, every time you design a web graphic, you're going to have to make the decision, do I want a GIF or a JPEG? Which one of these 2 are used? Now, there's also PNG, the PNG format, which is not supported by all browsers. And there's a couple of issues about it does some things better, but it has not become a widely used format yet. So the widely used formats are the ones we're going to discuss are GIF and JPEG that appear in this dialog box. GIF is used for everything that doesn't matter. Buttons, backgrounds, bars, little doodads, anything that, animations, anything where the quality does not have to be very, very high. JPEG, on the other hand, is used in two situations, where number one is quality is the thing that we're concerned about, that it's got to be a high quality image, like it's a photograph, in this case a cover of the Air London in-flight magazine. That was our next coup, was after we did their banner and did their website, they said, why don't you go ahead and do our print in-flight magazine. So in this case, our fictitious company is sending us tons of business. In this case, it's not only a photographic image, but it's a large image. And you need to use JPEG in those 2 situations, where quality is the concern. And you use JPEG when the physical size of the document is large, where it's a 500K document, it's like a 5x7 document. So it's kind of large, and you want to make sure that you use JPEG in those situations. JPEG actually compresses the files, throws away data it doesn't need to make small images. And I can tell you right now, our goal in optimizing a graphic, optimizing doesn't mean just making it ready for the web. Optimizing, it means you're going to optimize this image to where it loads as quickly as possible. Our goal in optimization is to create the best looking graphic at the absolute smallest possible file size. Absolutely, that's the real key. How small can I get this file? Because it has to load over a telephone line. onto somebody's computer. So we want to make it as small as possible. That's what optimization is all about. We do this last. We do all our rollovers and buttons and bars and all that cool stuff first. Now it's time to optimize. All right, in this case, I can tell you right now that as a big photographic image, this would be a JPEG. However, we're going to use it to discuss GIF because, I mean, it technically could be a GIF. It'd just be a really large one. Okay? Now, the settings are you choose your format, whether you want it to be a GIF or JPEG right here. Here's the optimized version, so here's what it's going to look like when we put it on the web. Okay? We're using 32 colors, all right, to create this image. All right, let's take it up to 256 colors, which is the maximum you can choose in this GIF format. Okay, let's choose 256. Watch the image when I choose 256. Okay, you can see some of the color coming back here. It's a little more colorful. Some of their skin tone has come back. Your goal, though, is to not use this 256 colors. Your goal is to try to get away with as few colors as is humanly possible. Well, why do you want to use less colors? Because here it is. Here's the big thing you want to drive home, is the less colors you use, the smaller your file size will be. The less colors you use, the smaller your file size will be. So if I can get away with using 2 colors, which I can't, let's go all the way down to 2, and I cannot make it work with 2. But the less colors, the better. So what I usually do is go all the way to the bottom, go to 2, highlight that field, and then use the up and down arrow keys on my keyboard, or these little up, down arrow keys here, to start adding colors back in. 4 colors. Now look at the difference between 3 colors, horrendous, 4 colors, it's getting better. 5 colors, 6 colors, 7 colors, 8 colors, 9. Everything's still kind of purple. When I hit the number 9, I don't know if you can see it, but the words In-Flight Magazine appeared in red. Let's keep moving up. 10 colors, 11. Just start toggling through here. Some skin tone starting to show up there for a second. Okay, 17 colors is a bit harsh. Let's go a little higher, 24 colors. Starting to look better, starting to look like a photograph now. Get up to 32 colors, it's starting to look pretty decent. So we're going to pull it up a little bit more. So that's what you're going to do here. You're going to try to get away with the least colors possible. There's also going to have to choose which color palette's going to work for you. We don't use the web color palette really anymore. I mean, it used to be really in vogue, but the web color palette is for people who are going to view your site using only a monitor that only displays 256 colors. And you have been able to buy a monitor or a computer system that would only display 256 colors for about 3 years now, or 4 years. And chances are you're not going to have a lot of people coming by your site who have a monitor that will only show 256 colors. So we've pretty much abandoned the web palette. We're going to use either perceptual, selective, or adaptive. Any of these palettes. The perceptual palette gives priority to the colors which your eye is most sensitive to. So that's a nice palette. The selective palette is like the perspective palette, but it actually tries to find more web-safe colors. And this one usually produces the most accurate color. That's why I guess Adobe made it the default, because it's the most accurate. And lastly is the adaptive palette, which really gives Photoshop the most range in choosing colors that were in the original image. So we can choose either selective or adaptive. Those are our favorites. We're going to use as few colors as possible. Dithering puts a slight pattern over your image to make it to help hide the fact that you went from 39 colors down to like 4. Watch what happens when I turn dithering on. Okay? Not a darn thing. Let's add some more colors. You can see it add a little better. Here, let's go up like 8 or 10 colors. Here's with dithering off. Here's with dithering on. And you got to, of course, move this slider up. There was 0 dithering. There we go. It tends to smooth the colors out. Let me take it back down. I had the dithering set to 0, so you really couldn't see. There's 4 colors with dithering on. There's with it off. So you can see, although it adds a little pattern of dots, it also helps hide the fact that you went from those colors. When do we turn? We leave diffusion on all the time, basically, unless it's just type. Unless it's just type, then we're gonna turn it off because it might make the edges of the type jaggy. Okay. The other thing is, if you come up with a setting that you like, if you use a setting an awful lot, you can save that setting. You can save your own favorite settings. There's a bunch of pop-ups here that are already built for you, but you can save your own settings from this pop-up menu. Save settings. Also, if you're trying to hit a specific size, like this image cannot be more than 22K, choose Optimize to File Size. Type in 22K. And it will either auto-select GIF or JPEG, whichever one's going to make it. Click OK. And it will take a look and say, okay, I can get that under 22K. I can get that to 21.6 as a JPEG with a quality setting of 50. Okay, now I do want to talk about JPEG real quick. That's pretty much the things you need to know about GIF. Use the least number of colors as possible. We leave diffusion on for all photographic images. We're going to use a selective palette, which is the default and our favorite. JPEG is much, much easier. JPEG, you just basically have to decide how high the quality must be. And the lower the quality you can get away with, the smaller the file size will be. Now you can see when I just switched this to low, it really kind of took a hit. You probably may not be able to see it on the screen, but it's just starting to get kind of jaggy, and you start to see these big blocks of color. So you might have to go a little higher to medium, which is a setting of 30. And you can go 30, 31, 32 until you see some of that damage go away, and then you've got a decent size. Progressive lets it load in stages to where it loads. You see a really bitmapped version, then you see it draw a little cleaner and a little cleaner. So these are your individual settings for JPEG. Again, JPEG, you want to try to get away with the lowest quality possible, so your file size will be absolutely the smallest. If you'll take a look here, the high setting has my file at 26.82. If I switch it to medium, it drops down to 15.13, so that's really a huge difference. And again, you can use your 2-ups and 4-ups, and the info is right down here. It says, well, here's your original, here's a JPEG, it's 15.13K. You can stretch it out a little, see a little better. There you go. It would download in 6 seconds on a 28.8 modem. And then you can, here's a GIF, would be 11K, would be less, it would load in 5 seconds, but look at the damage. You can really see how these GIFs would, on low settings, would really harm the image, where JPEG almost looks just like the original. So that's basically what you want to look at in optimizing. You can also add a little blur on a JPEG image. If you can add a little bit of blur in it, it actually makes the file size a little smaller. So if you can sneak a little blurring into it sometimes, you just saw the file size drop down to 14. If you add a little bit more blur in there, it drops down to 11, but of course there is a point at which it becomes so blurry you can't use it. So those are the main things that we wanted to talk about optimizing. Is you want to be able to look at the different versions, choose GIF when it's not important, choose JPEG when it is important, and of course always try to get away with the smallest number of colors as a GIF and the smallest setting, the smallest quality setting you can get away with for a JPEG. And that's optimizing in ImageReady in a nutshell. And again, if you're already familiar with it in Photoshop, it's easy to come over and optimize your images in ImageReady. One last thing. What happens when your image is sliced up and you want to individually control each slice and how it's done? Well, that's when you're going to actually click on the individual slices using the Slice Select tool, and you can do each one individually. You can optimize each section of your slice individually. And when you're finished, when you go to Save Optimize As, and this is when you're done, you've made all your choices, you've chosen what's going to be JPEG, what's going to be GIF, you choose Save Optimize As, and it's going to save your HTML only, your images only, or if you've sliced up your image, save your HTML and images. And what it'll do is it'll create a file on your hard drive, a folder with all the images on it, and an actual HTML file. That's right, ImageReady is going to create an HTML index page for you and a folder with all your images all ready to go. And if you use Adobe Go Live, click that little button right there that says Include Go Live Code to help make the round trip over to Go Live even easier. Well, there you have it. ImageReady Web Workshop. You've learned how to create some pretty amazing effects today, and even entire web pages, using this powerhouse combo of Adobe Photoshop and Adobe ImageReady. And I'll bet now you won't stand still for designing web pages that stand still. If you're interested in learning more about Photoshop, check out my other training videos at www.photoshopvideos.com. I'm Scott Kelby. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to the History X Official. Execute the past, preview the future.